just want to thank Mitch Udell for making this possible, and the shir is dedicated in memory of his father, Arthur Udell Avraham ben Eliezer, who was a God-fearing Jew, very well loved and respected by his family and his friends. He also knew how to live. He knew how to enjoy himself, and he has a wonderful son and wonderful daughter, Amy, of blessed memory, and grandchildren. They should all be inspired by him and have lots of success in their lives, in his marriage, and should be a Melitz Yosher, which means a good advocate on his family's behalf. So actually today we're going to do a slightly altered topic. Instead of following the Yom Tov trajectory that we're on, we're going to do something that's Yom Tov adjacent. It's really about mourning. You'd think it has nothing to do with Yom Tov, but I'm going to show you some of the connections between the laws of mourning and principles that we're talking about on Yom Tov. So just very quickly, let me just introduce you to the concept of Avelut in the Talmud and the Rambam, Shulchan Aruch. The Torah says that you should bury a person, and the Kohen, who's not allowed to ordinarily become ritually impure by touching a dead body or going over a dead body or even being in the same room as a dead body, is required. They must become tameh, become ritually impure for their close relatives to bury them. In other words, even though the person is a Kohen, when it comes to the death of their mother, father, sister, there's a caveat on the sister, or the unmarried sister, brother, and unfortunately, God forbid, a child. And believe it or not, according to Maimonides, a spouse is rabbinically, you don't have to, according to Maimonides, he says it doesn't say anywhere that you're related to your spouse for the laws of mourning. And the rabbis instituted that you have to mourn for your spouse. So very interesting, weird as they get. Right? I don't remember the Talmud talking about that, but maybe that's Maimonides who says that. It's probably in the Talmud because Maimonides doesn't make stuff up. So those are the people that we are required to mourn for. And first, there's the burial, and then there's what we call the Shiva that starts right after the burial, which is really not a Shiva. Shiva means 7, but the last day of the Shiva is Mixas Hayom Kikula, which means as soon as you do some little bit of mourning in the morning of the 7th day, it's as if the days went by, even though you have the majority of the day yet to come. That's a symbol of something. Maybe we'll get back to what it is later. But the interesting thing is that Shabbos is always part of the Shiva. It's almost essentially part of a cycle of 7 days. So sometimes you actually get up on Shabbos. Other times you get up Sunday or Monday, whatever day of the week you're getting up. But Shabbos is going to be, by its very nature, it's a 7-day period, even though the first day is the day of the burial. So even if you did the burial 5 minutes before sundown, that's day number 1. And you do this is why I always make a mistake. When I hear someone saying Shiva, I always think I have a whole week. I have 7 days. You do, but the first day is the day of the burial, which sometimes means you only have very late in the afternoon. That's day 1. And the last day you only have Shacharis. That's day 7. So you really have 5 days in the middle, of which normally one day is Shabbos. And that means Friday is a short day. And Shabbos is basically, you're not really going to pay a Shiva call. So you're left with 3.5 days. So we all say Shiva, and you don't really have 7 days, right? You think you have like 7 days, but it's really 3.5 days to be able to like make a meaningful visit with or visits within that time. Of course, if you're going to Minyan, you can always go to Minyan. Many people have a Minyan Saturday night for Mariv. People have a Minyan Sunday morning if they're, so you could visit more. But if you're just going to visit, don't forget that it's a tighter window than we imagine. Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So, you brought something interesting up. What happens related to that is many times, we just talked about a funeral that happened in this community, I believe, yesterday here in America, but they didn't really have the burial. That's going to happen, I don't know when, in Israel. So the law used to be, I say used to be, it may still be, but it's not always so clear, that if you have family that they do some type of ritual to say goodbye to their loved one who's then going to be transported to Israel, like we do today. They used to do it back then also. So the trip now takes a day, maybe a day, with all of the waiting at the airport and so on. It takes about a day. But back then it could have taken weeks. So the family who weren't going to Israel would start Shiva immediately. Not after the death, but as soon as they say goodbye, they'd walk the hearse out of town or to the edge of town. They'd go back and begin sitting Shiva. And then the family who went to Israel would only begin Shiva after the actual burial. So there's a little bit of a reminiscence. Some people till today will do that, where the family members will begin Shiva immediately after they'll go to the airport and then they'll come back and start Shiva. And the people who go on the plane will only begin Shiva once the burial actually takes place in Israel. There are some opinions that said, no, you shouldn't do that anymore because we have phones. So we estimate when the funeral will be, and even though it's not always able to be that, but we'll call the people in America and tell them the funeral took place, start Shiva now. So there's actually a difference of opinions. I've seen many people just begin the Shiva right away, but other people wait and do it in tandem once they hear the body's actually buried. That's one of these kind of modern questions. Back then, they didn't have that ability to pick up a phone. Like, we're going to do the burial. It's done. They didn't have a confirmation. It was a very, very hard to estimate. So anyway, now that leads me to this concept that sometimes a Shiva isn't always the classic moment of when the body's buried from that moment. And that the other time where we either delay the Shiva or interrupt the Shiva, which is very different, is when there's a Yom Tov. So that's how it is actually connected to the theme of what we've been learning about Yom Tov and so on, is if, actually remember, your wife's mother, I believe, passed away on the first day of Sukkot. So technically speaking, the Shiva would only start after Yom Tov, which is a long time later. However, the last day of Yom Tov would count as the first day of Shiva, and all of the days of Yom Tov from the time of death would count for the Shloshim, or definitely from the time of the burial. Once the burial will take place on Chol Hamoed, that would alter count the Shloshim. And here it's interesting because the Gemara says that why don't you sit Shiva? Why don't you sit Shiva on Yantif? In fact, the Gemara says people could be Menachem Aval, you could comfort the mourners, but it's not the laws of Avelut. It's not the regular laws of mourning. You don't sit on a little chair, you don't rip your shirt, you can take a bath, you can technically, well, you can't take a haircut because of Yantif, but it's not because you're a mourner. So why is it that you don't do the regular mourning on Yantif? And the other way of that is if you sat Shiva even for 1 minute before Yantif, the moment Yantif comes in, you have no more Shiva. So either way, you're not an Avel, you're not a mourner on Yantif, either because you're going to hold the real Avelut's going to only wait till after the Yantif, or if you started the Avelut before, it's going to end the Shiva right away. Why not? Why?
Can you sit after? If
you would sit. You would
what?
sit 6 days, which
After
really
Yontif?
yes, which really it's only 5 because we just learned this. The last day is a partial day. You would sit 5 days plus a little bit more, which is very long. If you ask me, it's almost like Yontif either makes something twice as long, or half as long, or not even. So it's a little strange. A lot of people don't like that because they like to have Shiva should just be Shiva. It shouldn't be 14, and it shouldn't be a day and a half. It should be Shiva, 6 and a half days. So it is hard, and that's the reality. But why is that the reality? So the Gemara says the following thing. The Gemara says, I'll read it in it's Daf Yudal Amid Beis. The Gemara says, Aval eno nohag avelos beregel. I'm sorry, Avel, not Avel, a mourner. Eno nohag does not practice the customs of mourning, of Elut, beregel on Yom Tov. Shenemar v'samachta b'chagechet, because it says you should rejoice on your festivals. Now he says, I avelut mikara. If you were the person who's already been in mourning, they did the burial before Yantif and they started the Shiva. So, Asi essay derabim, the positive mitzvah of rejoice on your festival, which is considered an essay derabim, and we're going to come back to this. It needs clarification. A public positive commandment. Somehow the mitzvah of simcha on the holiday is there's a public element to it. So that power, so to speak, of the essay derabim comes v'dachi essay diyachid and pushes aside the individual mourner's positive commandment to mourn, gets set away or knocked off, so to speak. In a way, a lot of people say, "Oh, it's great; they didn't have to sit Shiva." But the mourner might have wanted to sit Shiva. Who said they wanted to stop the Shiva after a day or two? But it's too bad because it would somehow interfere with the community's need to rejoice. Now, the funny thing is, I instinctively learned it, maybe inaccurately. This is how I learned it years ago when I first learned it. If you have a mourner sitting in mourning on Yantif, that means you're requiring everyone on Yantif and Chol Moed to go visit the mourner. You can't be happy in their presence because that's not the point of being in mourning or even visiting a mourner. You have to be cognizant of them sitting in mourning, and you can't talk till they talk to you first, and you're not even supposed to talk about anything. No Yankees, no Mets, not even the weather. You're supposed to only talk about the person who passed away. And okay, sometimes the person was 90, 100. It's sad, you love them, but sometimes the person was 50. It's very sad. So what are you going to do? It's Yom Tov. The community's supposed to be happy, and now they're busy. The whole community, that community is paying Shiva calls the whole time, having a minyan in the person's house, whatever it would require. I mean, you might, whatever Avelit would look like if you did have it on Yom Tov, it would take away from having a Yom Tov. I read it very simply. I just like, Yom Tov is a communal thing. Avelit is this one person, but this one person is then going to take away the community's need to celebrate. Now the Gemara continues and says, I'm going to add on to that, but via velus dehashahu, let's say the person like Patricia, where the burial was on Cholamoid, so the Avelit should have started really then, and on some level it actually does. There's a hidden mourning that does happen, and that's why the friends can come. That's okay, but you don't make it like the same level of Avelut with all of the laws of Avelut as if it would have been not on Yom Tov. Why? Lo essay diyachad, because that individual person's like it's a personal positive mitzvah for them to mourn, but it doesn't come v'dachi esed rabin and push away the communal's need to have the samach b'chagecha, to rejoice. Now, there is this concept of rabin, of the needs of the communal aspects. So, for example, if I'll bring in a few examples within the laws of Avelut. If there's a rabbi, rabbis are not supposed to, no one's supposed to teach Torah and even learn Torah if they're a mourner, not for themselves, not for others. Really, it's a question of why the rabbi gives a little Dvar Torah between Mincha Maariv, because the mourner is there, and he or she's not supposed to learn Torah, because Pekudei Hashem Yishar Misamchele, because the mitzvah, the Torah, not mitzvahs. Mitzvahs don't make people happy. It's a raya for misnagdim. It's a mitzvahs were supposed to make you happy. You wouldn't do mitzvahs in Avelis. But but Torah makes you happy. So therefore, you shouldn't. The Gemara says you shouldn't learn Torah during the Shiva. So what about Rabbi Akiva, or what about this rabbi or that rabbi? You're saying they can't teach Torah? And the Gemara says, no, that's different. That's Torah of the rabbin, meaning the community needs their Torah. They're like, that community will suffer if that teacher won't teach during the Shiva, because they need it. It's almost like, it's like if this is the only surgeon in town, go to work, because people are going to die. Even though it's pikuach nefesh, so it's not pikuach nefesh, but it's one step below pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh means to save a life, you do anything pretty much. So one step below that, it's for the needs of the community. So that your normal, that you wanted to sit at home and be a mourner and be sad. And no, sorry, you're a teacher of Torah, and you're not just a second-rate teacher. You're the top teacher. There's no one who can replace you. You're going to teach the Torah. There's other examples. I'll just give one more. Actually, I'll skip it because I don't want to get entangled in that. So we'll just move on. So one understanding of Avelos versus the essay de Rabbin, the positive mitzvah of the community, can be understood based on a shir that we gave a couple weeks ago. Sorry, we're a very Goyish group over here, Chas v'shalom, but we took a break for Christmas and New Year's. I don't want to say I celebrate them, but I took a day off. We had a comedy show for Christmas. We're being for Chassidim, we're being filmed. For other people, like, what are you talking about? How can you do Bittul Torah? But the shir before that, and the two shir before that, were about Ochel Nefesh, were about why Yom Tov is different than Shabbos and how you can cook on Yom Tov and why you can cook. And then the shir before that was on Simchas Yom Tov, was on the so it was Ochel Nefesh and then Simchas Yom Tov. Those are the three shiurim that we've been doing before this year. So I actually want to tie one of the key concepts together here. On the shiur on Simchas Yom Tov, you didn't get to hear this part because the shiur was running late. So I actually had Lou Engel come the next day, and he recorded this. But this was the part of the shiur. It was supposed to be part of the shiur. And this is what it is. You have Shabbos is about oneg. Oneg is translated as enjoying, but it doesn't really tell the full picture. So the way I'd explain it better is when Mozart, by the way, this last night, I want to tell you something. I decided to start listening to classical music instead of whatever Narishkeit I'm listening to. Well, and there's a song that comes on. I'm like, this must be where Hatikva comes from. Anybody know what I'm talking about? There's a Hungarian composer named Smetana, a Czech. I didn't know there was a difference. But tell that to my grandmother. She'll get angry, right? So that composed a song about the longest river that flows through. Is it Hungary or Czechoslovakia? Help me out here. And it has and it's a beautiful piece, beautiful composition, and it really sounds like Hatikva. Not the whole Hatikva, but like that part of it is in the song. And I'm like, oh yeah, we stole this one too. We stole the land. We stole the song. You know what else? I mean, Naomi Shemer's already in trouble with Yerushalayim Shel Zahav is probably a Spanish song. I'm like, that you didn't know about. I don't know if you hear any of you guys follow any of this. And I'm like, so of course I Google it right away. And there's like three opinions. And one opinion is that even the composer of that song based it on an earlier folk song, and the Hatikva was also based on an earlier folk song, and they could have had a common origin, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, because Hatikva was made, let's say, 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, and this song was made 150 years ago. But they're both based in part on this really ancient melody that could have ostensibly had some Jewish origins as well, or not. Who cares? We didn't steal it. We just sounds the same, a little bit. But my point is that I let myself, while I was singing, while I was hearing this piece, I have to say it was beautiful. It's a beautiful piece. And just think like this. This Smetana, when he made this song, you know what type of euphoria was going through his brain when he composed that song? What drug he was on of the mind. Meaning he wasn't on drugs, but he must have had I'm listening to the song and I'm like going crazy from this song. The song is amazing. So when he made that song, he didn't make it, but whatever, when he kind of made that song, something was going off in his head that birthed that song, even if it had some parts of he acknowledged that he borrowed some parts from earlier things, but he still created a masterpiece out of it, just like Hatikva, same thing. But the point is that there's something happening when a composer composes something. Something is happening in his or her head. When we say Oneg Shabbos, that's kind of what we are hoping for. that the person is in this relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with God, that's not that different than a great composer creating a classical piece of music that's going to inspire people for hundreds of years. Now, that's oneg. Oneg is that kind of euphoria that comes with creativity. But it can be private. In fact, it probably usually is private. Like the composer who's on a piano and it's just flowing through him, or a scientist who's taking a bath and all of a sudden the answers to some big questions are just coming at it. Just he's relaxed and all of a sudden the answers start coming into his head. Yeah, that's oneg. That you sit Shiva for. I mean, I don't mean it like that. You don't sit Shiva for when you have a breakthrough. It's part of the cycle of the week because it's not a festival. You don't have to have a gathering. There's another thing. The last time I was in Israel, and I walked into Jerusalem I was in Jerusalem for Shabbos, and I walked into the Rova from the hotel I was staying with my daughter, and just like I was meeting relatives, meeting friends on the way, not even planned, you know. And I'm like, what a simcha, what a joy. The last time I had that was at your son's bar mitzvah. And that when you come to Eretz Yisrael, there's just this like feeling of a little bit of what it must have been like to be Ola Regel, to go up to the Beis HaMikdash for the 3 holidays. Because New York, by the way, New York is the most vibrant city in the United States, despite COVID, despite the mayor. It's such a vibrant city. But compared to Israel, it's dead. Compared to Yerushalayim, it's like a boring, sleepy little town. That's how I felt. Because here you go, there's people, I don't know who they are on Broadway, you know. I see there's people from all over, from Iowa, from I don't know what, in Times Square. I love them, but I don't have the simcha doesn't come out when it's just crowded in Times Square. But in the old city, it's simcha. Now, okay. First of all, the real simcha used to be they would go to Yerushalayim, to the Beis HaMikdash, and then they would combine that simcha being all together in the Beis HaMikdash with a shalmei simcha, with a carbon that they would eat. And the idea of eating a carbon is like a shlomim itself. The word conveys a peace offering because everyone gets a piece of it. So you feel like you're doing your part. You're putting part of it is going to the Kohen, another part's going on the Mizbeach, another part you're having and sharing. So it's like this transformation. The whole idea of a carbon is to take a physical animal and bring it close to God. And so then what do we have afterwards? The Machlokas Rashi, Tosfos, and the Rambam. This we learned about in the Shir about Simcha. This we did learn about. This we did get to. Simcha, according to the Rambam, is a positive mitzvah today to have Simcha with meat and wine collectively. The Rambam says if you eat on your own or even just your family and don't invite other people, particularly those who are less fortunate, he calls it Simchas Kreso. He calls it the joy of your stomach. And then he quotes a prophet that equates that with vomit and excrement. So not nice, not fun. It's almost like when you read the Rambam, like, does he have to be this strong? Does he have to be like so tough on it? No, he actually is teaching a halacha. What is simcha? It's not just eating or drinking. It's about joining together, having people come together because it's a mitzvah. It's an essay derabim. It's a halachic category. The Gemara uses it as a halachic, because a lot of people, by the way, don't know what the Rambam is talking about. Where does it say that in the Gemara? This is where it says it. You know, it's like sometimes we're not thinking like there's this Gemara I don't understand this Gemara and I don't understand that Rambam. Well, they answer each other. The reason why the Rambam says you have to, there's other reasons as well, but the reason why the Rambam includes that you have to include other people in your rejoicing on Yom Tov is because the whole nature of simcha is shared. That's why on Shabbos, it's still part of the cycle where what is now so I'm kind of explaining why so I explained Oneg, right? With Mozart and Smetana and Hatikva. And Shabbos is like, if you could quiet yourself down to the level of like, just hear me out for a second. When the Shagas Aryeh comes up with how to understand something, when Aaron Kotler comes up with how to explain a difficult Rambam or a Tosfos, these people are composers. These people are Einstein within the Torah world. They're having oneg in their chidushim and their thing. That's what Shabbos is. That doesn't undo the Shiva. That doesn't knock it away. That doesn't defer it till afterwards. Why not? Because you can't even stop Rav Moshe Feinstein for what happens in his head. If a gift comes into his head when he's sitting Shiva, he didn't do it on purpose. Like I have machshava zaras, I have like inappropriate thoughts, the way Rav Moshe has an answer to a difficult Tosfos. He can't control himself. It's not his fault. He was, I'm sure when he said Shiva, he was trying, like he didn't know what to do because like things were still coming into his head because he can't stop himself. I may be wrong. You have to ask people who knew, like what they say about the Rogatchover that he wouldn't stop learning during the Shiva, and people say, you can't learn. He said, no, I'll go to Ganem for it. I don't care. That'll be the thing they got me on. But okay, now why is it? What is it during Shiva that's so solitary? And why is it that we can only go so far in comforting the mourner? So there's a Gemara that says, it's a Mishnah, it's in Pirkei Avos, that you shouldn't try to comfort the mourner k'shemesa muta lefanav, before the burial. Wait for the Shiva to start. That doesn't mean you can't have friends who check in on them, of course, but it's like, as a general principle, you don't start making Shiva calls when it isn't Shiva yet. And the simple answer is it's a state of shock, grief. People don't know what to do. They're not ready yet. It's like, wait for the time. Now here, I'm guessing two people in the room know this, because I've never seen anyone practice this on the West Side, and I don't want to tell anyone about this. And so therefore, even though I'm telling you this custom, it's not the West Side's custom. It's a custom some people have. Some people have a custom not to pay a Shiva call the first 3 days. Again, day one starts the day of the burial, so it's over quickly. Day two is probably, you could even be Mekel and say day three could be Mixasiyam Kikulo. So I remember when I was in Morristown, I was learning, and a friend of mine's mother or father died. And we were in Crown Heights, but we're going back to Morristown, and one of the Magidish Shurim said, we'll make a Shiva call, but it's not really the ideal time because it's not 3 days yet, but we have to explain it's either now or never. So the West Side, I never heard anyone say, I'm not going to make this. You know this. You heard this, Minna? You heard it? You don't see it practice, but you've heard it before?
Yeah.
What? Okay, anyway, you heard it, Rabbi Newman? Okay. Anyone else heard this custom? Okay, you heard it. Okay, so 3 people. Okay, good. 4 people. Why not? What's wrong? So you have an answer? Go for it. Morris Lamb. Ah, you read the book. Yeah, yeah, Morris Lamb, Rabbi Morris Lamb. Okay. Wait for 3 days. Okay. Good. And so the simple answer is it's kind of the extension, just like you can't come to the person right. You don't go to the hospital to come. Not that you can't have immediate, the best friend, the family go, but like other than that, you don't want to have like 40 people in the hospital when the body is just still warm. Like give the guy a break. He has to call let the Chaver Kadisha show up first. So right after the burial also, especially if it was a little bit of a shock or the person's disoriented, give them a day or two. Let the best friend come first. Okay. But there's another thought related to that. And this is the principle that, to tell you the truth, why are we learning this now? It's your father's yard site, but this is Shiva. The Shiva happened 5 years ago. Because there's this idea that when we sit Shiva, if you learn the Gemara, there's a debate. If we're sitting Shiva for the mace, for the person who died, or we're sitting Shiva for the relatives, meaning we're comforting the people who are living. The person is dead. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. You can't help them then. So what's the difference? L'may nafka. So if it's for the mace, for the dead person, if the dead person commanded his children, I don't want you to sit Shiva for me. I hate Shivas. I don't want people to be sad. Go and be happy. Don't sit Shiva. You would listen to him, or because it's for them. They don't want it. Don't do it. But if it's for the mourners and the person who's dying said, please don't sit Shiva for me, it's not up to them. The mourners need to process it. They need to grieve, and they want to grieve. So you don't listen to the person who's going to die, because it's not up to him about it. It's not his Shiva to do away with. So that's the debate in the Gemara. It literally says that thing. Okay. Comes the Zohar, and the Zohar has this crazy and by the way, what is the halacha? A lot of people don't say what the halacha is, and it's assumed it's kind of both. Like it's both for the dead and to comfort the mourners. Yeah. No, but I'm saying the Gemara actually says, this is Gemara. This is not Reb Chaim. It's not even the Rama. The Gemara says, if it was for the dead person, he could tell those who would otherwise be obligated to mourn for him, don't mourn for me, and they would be able to listen to it. If that would be the halacha, you'd write in your will whether mourn, don't mourn, and then the mourners would either mourn or not mourn based on what you asked them to do. Now, we don't find anyone, I don't want to say reputable. I never read anything in contemporary halacha that says that the mourner can tell the family not to mourn for them, and you wouldn't, and that you would listen. But it doesn't. But it's almost like they avoid saying the halacha is this way or that way. Yes, Rabbi Newman. Yeah, but that's also because you're not supposed to overly praise someone, so they may. Yeah, that's true. So here's what the Zohar says. This is very important. So very, very important Zohar. I learned this 25 years ago plus, and it's so fresh on my mind. I probably looked it up once since then, but it's just sometimes you see something and it's so like crystal clear when you see it. I have a terrible memory, so you ask me. Last night's dinner that I can tell you, because it puts our shawarma places to shame. Mitchell took me to Elite Hummus in Englewood. I highly recommend it. Elite Hummus. It's so much more than hummus. They're underselling it. But other than a great dinner, I can't tell you what I ate yesterday. But this Zohar is fantastic. 25 years ago, I remember it. And here's what it says. It says like this. When a person dies, His soul doesn't just go up to the Gan Eden. You ever heard that? Like, oh, they're in a better place. Don't say that anymore. Just take it easy. Just what you should say is there's a process. Because if it was really in a better place, why are we sitting Shiva? Why do we have a shloshim? Why do we have a yard site? Just celebrate. By the way, they used to have 10 cups of wine. And the Rambam brings down 10 cups of wine in the base of Avel, but that was because they were self-medicating, because they were sad. It wasn't because they were happy. 10 Yayin Lamari Nefesh, give wine to the depressed. That was their Prozac. That's how they dealt with their grief. They gave them a lot of wine. They drowned their sorrows. But here's what the Zohar says. The neshama is in shock. It doesn't know what's going on because it's hovering over the body. Now he says the moment of death is a glorious moment. That's true. The moment of death, the soul is reunited with the Shekhinah, and it's wonderful. So don't worry about dying. Dying itself is fine. Worry about after you die. That's when the trouble starts. Because the first thing you're going to recognize is, what is this? I thought I'm with this body. I thought the body and me are the same. Right? You could imagine if you stub your toe, you're like, it's not just the pain of stubbing your toe. It's like the recognition that you stubbed your toe because you're a shlamazel and a shlemiel, and you kicked your own ceiling, your own wall by accident because you don't know where you're going. So when you lose a little bit of control of your body, you get so frustrated. Could you imagine when you lose your whole body, where you're going to say, "What the hell just happened here?" So you'll have a nice moment when you die, and a moment later you'll be in shock. So that's what the Zohar says. The reason why we don't comfort the mourner is because the mourner is trying to have empathy for the soul of the deceased, of their relative that they're mourning for. And there is no empathy in a place that could alleviate the distress that the soul's having at that moment. So that's almost why, like, when somebody dies, sometimes the people who really love that person, especially if they're younger, and there's extreme stress at that moment. It's a reflection of where the soul is and its distress. Now, once you do the burial, by the way, this is very important for everyone to know this idea, because it's like this platitude that people say. It's not even true. And it's an insult to people where they say the person's in a better place. You're not really respecting the process. Yeah.
It's appropriate to say that. That's why you always say that the neshama should have a aliyah.
Yeah.
Instead of like,
it's all good.
The person.
Yeah. Thank God there's like all these toxic positivity songs out there now in the Jewish world. Thank God they don't have one for this. Oh, the person died. Baruch Hashem, it's so wonderful. They're in such a better place. I mean, you would think they would have that by now, because there's so many, like, everything is so wonderful and great and just getting better. So death is also a better place. The answer is that it's not a better place till later. It's a process. Just like it's not a better place for God forbid, for the relatives, they're not a better place. What about the soul? The soul's eternal. Well, the soul wanted to be in the body because God wanted to create a body with a soul, because that's where it can accomplish the most. So that's why a mourner is solitary, because it's reflecting the pain a little bit of where the soul of the dead person is, which is not yet in a good place. It starts getting better. After the funeral, you could sit Shiva. Shiva begins where you could comfort the mourner, which means you could comfort the soul. Why? Because before the funeral, the soul was agitated because it was looking at its body and it was going, "Oh, I don't know. I'm here. I'm right." It's almost like, am I going to come back into the body or not? It's confused. It can't just say goodbye. It can't just get it right away. But once the burial happens, the soul starts realizing, oh, okay, I think we're going to have to part ways, but I still don't want to go so quickly. So the soul, according to the Zohar, splits its time between where it's buried and the house of mourning, the people who he or she loved. It's beautiful. See what the Zohar is saying? Oh, it's a beautiful Zohar. And that's why you sit Shiva, because you're sitting, you're not running around, you're not going out, because you're sitting in the presence of the place where the neshama is trying to make head or tails of where it's like, it doesn't want to just take off the Gan Eden yet. It's not ready to do that because it has to say goodbye. And it also has to like let go. And then from the Shiva to the Shloshim, it's the next stage where there's still a part of mourning, and then until the yard site. And then once there's a yard site, the mourning is over. The neshama is in Gan Eden 100%. And every subsequent yard site, it goes a higher level. Tonight, higher level in Gan Eden for your father. Every yard site, a higher level in Gan Eden. But that's the process of mourning, is a recognition and an awareness of where the neshama of the mace kind of is. Of course, it's out of our capacity to know spiritual things like that, but the Chazal gave us these nihugim, it gave us the customs to be able to tap into them.
I Catholic has a pamphlet on mortality and so it says also that more a person identifies with their body, the harder it is to.
Okay, this is a heavy Musar shir. Who knew this shir was going to be a Musar shir? Yeah. It is a big, it's not only a mitzvah, the Rambam says it's a bigger mitzvah. Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, it depends. It depends how annoying you're going to be there by being there. That's not a yes or no. But for some people, for most people, if it would somehow help, yes. But not. That's an etiquette question to know. You have to know who you're dealing with before you make that decision. You know. On the one hand, look, it's a kavod hameis. You know, it's like you're respecting it's giving kavod. So sometimes, like the more people who show up, the more honor it is. Other times, that person, maybe there's a certain privacy issue. So you have to balance that. It's not a yes or no.
So does the Shiva house have a special significance?
Absolutely.
You know, like because the Shema is.
Yes, because the neshama, according to the Zohar, the Shiva house is where the neshama is presently splitting its time between that and the kvura, or the place where it's buried. So according to regular understanding, you don't need the Zohar. Say, we're just doing a mitzvah. The Rambam says you have an extra mitzvah when you do the Nicham Avelim, because you're being Menachem the Avelim who are alive, and you're also honoring the dead. So it's like a double mitzvah. So if you just do, let's say, Bikur Chol and visit somebody who's sick, you're only doing one mitzvah, but if you do Nicham Avelim, you're doing two. Yeah, Rabbi Newman. Right away. Yeah, that day.
At night, out of the sometimes you see people they put off for a day or 2 days, 3 days, and don't just show up.
Yeah. But there's a reason for that. The Rambam Paskins, it's a Gemara. By the way, I got into the whole thing. I said a Dvar Torah, and I recycled the Dvar Torah that I had given here in a shir, and I was in Crown Heights in front of 200 Chabad guys, and I found a very tenuous. It's really a Gemara Vart, and I found a little connection to the Alter Rebbe, and I was wondering to myself, well, what will anyone know that it's not really the Alter Rebbe, it's really a Gemara? And yes, there was one, the Rosh Shiva there came over to me and said, it's a Gemara, And I said, yeah, but the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch don't paskin like that, Gemara, that story. And the Magen Avraham and the Alter Rebbe do, so I'm still good, you know. So we have to keep our eye on the clock because we have to be part of the 10 o'clock minyan. But the Gemara, what was there's a Gemara that says that you should bury someone right away except for your parents. Your parents, you should wait to honor them, to make sure everyone who you want to be there should be more people there. It's very interesting. So it's and the Rama brings it down so sometimes there's a Gemara and then the Shulchan Aruch or whatever ignores it. It doesn't paskin like it because there's different things in the Gemara, like my little story in Crown Heights. But here that's taka thing. So why then in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim in particular are they so makbid? They have there's many different customs in different places. And we try to respect them and understand that they're not all the same. But there is the fact that we wait here a day or two or three. There's sometimes halachically, it's not just batlanis. Look, I remember I'm a very nice guy. I never tell people what to do. But one of the times where there was someone who died in the community, and they came to me and they said, "We'd like to delay the funeral by 5 days because someone in the family had a very good tutor that was going to do a prep for like the SAT that's coming in 3 days, and then they'll fly in." I'm like, no. Tell them to cancel the tutor, and we're not waiting 5 days for a tutor. Meaning you have to get your priorities straight. But if people are getting on the plane as quickly as they can, you wait. So
Lenient to bury the dead on the second day of Yom Tov?
no. So here's one of the interesting things: when you're yeshiva bacher, you read a Gemara like, and then you read the Shulchan Aruch, and I'm like, what? What? It's shocking. The Gemara says, and the Shulchan Aruch says, the Rambam says, you can bury people on the second day of Yom Tov. Jews can bury. First day, Goyim can bury. The second day, Jews can bury. We don't do that. It's like Ramosha and the major halakhic authorities said, first of all, between you and me, they didn't say this, but this is really the truth. They didn't have refrigeration back then. So you didn't want to leave a body around for too long. It was not a good idea. But what Ramosha says is, we already know, okay, we have refrigeration. They'll pick up the body, they'll put it in a place where it's going to be fine for a couple extra days. If you're going to do the burial on Yom Tov, second day of Yom Tov, there's going to be massive chilul Yom Tov, because back then they didn't even have cars, so they walked to the edge of the town, and that's where they did the burial. It would be like walking to Midtown or something equivalent. You walked a mile or two, the big deal, to the edge of the town. That was the biggest walk you were going to walk. And then they would do the kfura. But now that's not how it works. People are going to have to drive to Long Island or to Livingston. It's going to be massive chil Yom Tov. So we don't do it. That's what Moshe says. It could be there's a few Hasidic communities that might still do it. I've never heard an actual case, but I heard it does exist. That there's some Hasidic communities where they do have ability to do it without Chil Yom Tov, because and that's that. I'll keep you posted if I hear anything about it. But anyway, we got to go down for Mario.
Maybe it's for the grandparents. They all go in their cars.
They go in their cars.